Good morning. Good morning. It's great to see everyone here this morning. We do have still a long list of those on the sick list, those that are recuperating from various procedures, and just talked to Brother Bert. He still doesn't know when his surgery is coming up, but he's going in next week for a couple of shots in his back. So just make sure we keep him in our prayers. I always keep Brother Terry, since he's still going through all he's going through. Moody's, Rick May, Holly is getting better slowly day by day. She managed to come over to the house recently and was walking okay and sitting okay, but she couldn't sit long and couldn't stand long, so she's slow. They said it was going to be 6 months, and they're just now going into month 3 on her recovery. So anyone else that we need to think about? Brother Kelvin, would you lead us in a prayer, please, before we begin?
Father God in heaven, we are so grateful to you that you have allotted us time and space on this side of eternity to come to study your word, that we may grow and live thereby. We are praying for those who are not able to be here due to sicknesses and due to lack of strength. Father, we're asking that you will look down upon each and every one of them, touch them with the fingertip of thy love, and give them a full portion of their health and strength that they may be with us at the next appointed time. We pray, oh God, as we go through all of our services on today, all we do here is say will be pleasing and acceptable in your holy and divine sight. Be with all those who have prepared to teach us, that we may understand the word, bring back to their recollection the things that they have prepared, that we indeed may be able to clearly understand thy will for us. We pray and we thank you for Jesus Christ this morning, who made it all possible by dying on the cross, shedding his precious blood, that we through him might have life eternal. We're so grateful and thankful for all you have done and all we know you will continue to do for us. This we pray in Jesus' name.
Last week we studied Gideon, and then according to our handouts, our study sheets, today we're going to pick up with Samson, and that's chapter 13. Now, by skipping from Gideon to Samson, we missed a lot of information in there, but not enough to go into detail on any one person a week at a time. But if you look at the first verse of chapter 13, it says, "Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now, when we pick up from there and go into Samson's birth, we have to understand that this chapter is not in a chronological order with everything else. There is some overlap because Samson was born prior to the Philistines starting this war again. So if you'll go back to where we left off last week, we had the last thing that we looked at last week was chapter 8, and starting with verse 34, right after Gideon had died, it said, "Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side, nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal or Gideon in accordance with the good he had done for Israel." And then we had briefly mentioned that Abimelech had come in and killed 70 of the sons and took over and ruled. And also, who can tell me the 6 judges that we're going to skip? When we go from Gideon, who was number 5, to Samson, who was number 12, we skip 6 judges. Who are they? Well, Abimelech, who was the next? Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan. You missed Ibzan. Ibzan, Elon, Abzan. And then we get to Samson. Now, also during that time period, the Philistines had been, well, sort of in between. The Philistines were mentioned back when Shamgar, back in chapter 3, Shamgar, and then they're sort of silent for a while, but then during this time period before we get to Samson, it was the Amorites and the Philistines, and now when we get to chapter 13, dealing specifically with Samson, it's the Philistines. So if you look at verse 2 then, it says, "Now there was a certain man from Zorah," which is a city, "of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children." The Danites, who are they? Where are they in respect to Judah? You got Judah. Simeon is inside the tribe of Judah, and then just slightly north of Judah is Dan. Dan had two locations. They had this area right there, and they said, if you recall, this is not in our current lesson, but if you recall the history there, they were saying that they didn't have enough land, and so they were told to go to the mountains and find their own land. So way up north here you've got a little bit of Dan, but then down here you've got Dan, and this location is in the area that's just north of Judah for the family of the Danites. And then verse 3 says, "The angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Indeed now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son." This is nothing new as far as the Old Testament goes. God intervenes several times throughout the Old Testament history where things like this happen. For instance, Sarah, for one. And then in verse 4 he says, "Now therefore please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean." The next verse tells us that he's going to be a Nazirite from birth. But I want to ask the question. Somebody go back to Numbers chapter 13. Numbers chapter 13. Starting with verse 4, read till I tell you to stop, because it goes for a pretty good space as far as the Nazirite vow.
Now these were their names: from the tribe of Reuben, Shemua son of Zachar; from the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat son of Hori; from the tribe of Judah, Caleb son of Jephunneh; from the tribe of Issachar, Igal the son of Joseph; from the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea; from the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel son of Sodi; from the tribe of Joseph, that is from the tribe.
Okay, time out. I'm at the wrong place. Chapter 6.
You didn't appreciate my butchering of the names?
Oh, I definitely appreciated it, but that was not what I was looking for. Chapter 6.
Shall come upon his head until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. Then he shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean even for his father or his mother, for his brother or his sister when they die, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation he shall be holy to the Lord. And if anyone dies very suddenly beside him, and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. On the seventh day he shall shave it. Then bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and the priest shall offer one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, and make atonement for him, because he sinned in regard to the corpse. And he shall sanctify his head that same day. He shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation, and bring a male lamb in its first year, as a trespass offering. But the former days shall be lost, because his separation was defiled. Now this is the law of the Nazarite. When the days of his separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought to the door of the tabernacle of meeting.
Okay, that was it. That's the vow of the Nazarite. So he was going to be a Nazarite from birth. Now the reason that I wanted you to read that so we could all look at all the things that they were supposed to do. As we look at Samson, we're going to find out that he doesn't exactly adhere to that at times. But now we know what to look for. And verse 5 said, "For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." As we go along, we'll find out that he did start to deliver them, but who finished delivering them from the Philistines, or however you pronounce it? We go through all the judges, and no judge completed the mission. We go through start with the kings, and I heard the word. King David is the one that finished delivering them from the Philistines. And it says, "So the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of the angel of God, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name." The reason I'm stopping on that particular passage is, depending on which version or translation that you look at, there are some that make the mention that she asked but was not told. In American Standard, ESV, King James, New King James, a bunch of others, it says she did not ask. It makes no difference because she wasn't told his name. "And he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death." This is what she's telling her husband. Verse 8, "Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born." If the wife comes in and tells him that an angel of the Lord has spoken to her, she's been barren, you're going to have a male child, he's going to be a Nazarite from birth, he's going to begin the delivery of Israel from the Philistines, what would Manoah be wanting him to come back and talk to him about? Hasn't he received all the information that he needs?
He probably wants to be sure, because that's a very big commitment that she has come to him. I mean, you almost don't even have an heir, really, is kind of how it appears. This kid's going off for something different.
I'm thinking that you're on the right path, that he's wanting some verification on this matter. Verse 9, "And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field, but her husband was not with her." Well, that doesn't do him any good, does it? So she runs and gets him. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband and said to him, "Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me." So Manoah arose and followed his wife, When he came to the man, he said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" And he said, "I am." And Manoah said, "Now let your words come to pass. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work?" What had his wife just told him a few verses before? What his rule of life was and what his work would be. So he's wanting some verification there, I think. So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe." Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you." And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Though you detain me, I will not eat your food." Why is he not going to eat food? Pardon? Doesn't need it? What about when they came to Abraham on their way to Sodom? They went in and ate. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I think the situations are different because as we go on down through here, I didn't read the next verse, which I consider the key verse on that. The angel said to Manoah, that you detain me. The rest of the verse is, "But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord." So the angel of the Lord is talking, but who is he wanting credit to go to for what is about to happen, this birth that is about to happen? He's wanting pardon? The Lord. He's wanting credit to go where credit is due, to the Lord. And for Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. So apparently at the point where he's talking, he didn't know that, but now it's been pointed out to him. Then, yes? Right.
That's borne out in what you just said, that it finally clicked when you specifically told him.
Now it's all coming together, yeah. And then he asked, "What is your name, that when your words come to pass, we may honor you?" He's still wanting to honor the messenger and not the message. And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful?" And we see this phrase used several times in Scripture describing the angel of the Lord. So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to the Lord, and he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. You can only speculate what kind of wondrous thing he's doing here. If you let your imagination just go, you can see all kinds of things. For instance, when they put it on the rock and he did wondrous things, did he just all of a sudden make the fire? But then it happened as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the air of the altar. And when Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. That was all the verification that they needed. The angel had, it was definitely an angel of the Lord that spoke to him, and he went up to heaven in the flame. Yes, sir.
A question about this particular messenger. Normally when you see the phrase, the angel of the Lord, not an angel of the Lord, it's specifically talking about Christ before he came in the flesh. Is that the case here?
I personally believe it is because of the phrase that's used to describe him in other places, the word wonderful.
Right.
There are some translations, for instance, the King James, when it comes to what is your name, it's, I'm sorry? Secret. I was trying to get that word out, but it's secret. So I'm using the New King James today, and it talks about his name Wonderful, which is referring to Christ in other places that way.
Well, the reason I ask, and it may be because they didn't recognize him for what he was in the first place.
Yeah.
Usually one of the defining points between Christ and an angel is that he accepts worship. And you don't see that happen here.
Right.
I just wonder what the difference is here as opposed to some other times, if it's Christ.
I go back to, at this point during the Old Testament time, who is the main object of worship? God the Father. That's my connection. Right or wrong? Huh?
Fair answer.
Yes, sir.
When you look at this account, every time I've studied Samson, I see how it starts with the angel coming and she's been barren and we're going to give you a son and you're going to dedicate him to the Lord and do all these signs and wonders, and it's got a great start, and then they get Samson. How disappointing must they have been the way he acted.
I understand what you're saying, and I half agree with you, but also as we get farther on into the lesson, we'll find out that some of his actions were actually God's plan.
Correct.
So,
Well, were they God's plan, or did he use what was already in front of him?
well, what was the purpose from the beginning?
Deliverance.
Deliver. He needed an end to do that. When we skip over a little bit, and he found the woman that he thought he loved, that was his, she was a Philistine. Samson wasn't supposed to marry outside that group, but he did. That's God using that to, so.
But I don't know that I would go as far as to say that that's God's plan, because God's plan for Samson was that he be raised right. He lived an Israelite life the way he was intended to, and other avenues would have opened. I am certain of that by what we see with Abraham and Isaac. God used things that happened to accomplish his will, but that probably was not what he intended in the beginning, because people made wrong choices.
Okay, let me straddle a fence and fall on both sides.
That sounds painful.
Samson was predestinated to begin the delivery of the Philistines. He was not predestined to do it. He still had free will. God used that free will portion, knowing what's going to happen, so he's using that. So was it a hard-drawn plan that, Samson, you will do exactly this? But when Samson does do that, that is part of God's method. God uses, you can look all through the Old Testament, and
The only reason I make a point of it is that I've heard people use Samson and his profligate choices to say, well, it's okay whatever I do in life God will make it okay and I'll be all right. That is not the way it was intended to be.
Nope. Samson was a free agent. God just used that. We skipped a little bit ahead. Let's go back here to verse 21. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die, because we have seen God." Where does that come from? I'm sorry? Let's go back to Exodus 33. One of the places, Exodus 33. And verse 20. But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live." And so this is what they thought. His wife had to, yes, sir?
But they also knew that it was the angel, not God in person.
Did they?
Well, God didn't appear like that in the Old Testament except to Moses.
Right.
And the angel said he wasn't going to accept the 100 should be from God.
That's right. But I like her answer. If you look at the next verse and look at her answer.
But let me say this.
Okay.
If the angel of the Lord told her what was going to happen, she was going to have a son, and so forth, why did she think she was going to die? Because that wasn't part of being the prophecy of being fulfilled.
She didn't. He did. She didn't, because she answers him in the next verse here. But his wife said to him, "If the Lord had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as these at this time." That's the perfect answer. Verse 24, so the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Manaah Dan between Zorah and Eshtal. Any questions, comments on chapter 30?
Not the first time that a good wife has kept her husband in line. Got back on track.
We can also say the opposite, can't we? But you're right, absolutely.
Can you imagine the look on her face when the angel said, "Everything I told her, well, your wife is what you're supposed to do." She looked over and said, "I told you so."
Chapter 14. And this is Samson and his Philistine wife. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. And he went up and told his father and mother, saying, "I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife." Why didn't he do it himself? Sorry? That wasn't the procedure. The parents got involved and arranged it and paid the dowries, and the time could go anywhere from a few days to up to a year during the betrothal period before the actual marriage took place. But when he told his parents to go up and get her for him, their response is Then his father and mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" Samson is straying off the Nazarite path here. But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she pleases me well." But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. This is the verse I was going into with our conversation. So, chapter 14 deals with him going and getting a wife outside the Israelites. And it's going to be an occasion for him to take action against the Philistines. Without us reading that chapter, who can give me a brief synopsis of what happens?
Bunch of foxes run through the city, burning everything down.
I'm sorry?
Bunch of foxes run through the city, burning everything down.
Well, he goes, and on the way there, to the wedding at least, he runs across a lion, or a lion runs across him. And what does he do to the lion? Okay. I'm getting a little bit out of sequence here. Up to a year later, when he goes back and heads to the wedding feast, what does he do with the lion that he had killed previously? He took honey from the carcass. What does the Nazarite vow say about touching dead things, unclean things? Not to. But he got the honey, even gave some to his parents, but he didn't tell his parents where he got the honey. So then when he gets to the wedding feast, he poses a riddle to the people. And by the way, the wedding feast back in those days lasted anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, but this one I think lasted about a week, because when we get through on starting counting the days, the number of the days and everything. But he poses a riddle, and actually there's a little wager involved that he says, if you can answer my riddle, I'll give 30 changes of clothes and a few things to you, but if you can't answer, then you give me that same amount. And after 2 or 3 days into it, they can't figure out what's going on, so the men talk to his new wife and demands, tells her to find out from him what the answer to the riddle is. And on the last day, he acquiesces to her request, I guess you could say, because she's bawling at him every day. He tells her, she in turn tells them, then they tell him. So he loses the wager. But at the same time, what happened with the relationship between he and his new wife? He was angry and actually uses the phrasing that she was in cahoots with them. She loved them more than she loved him, because she told them his secret. And then what does he do?
Gave her away.
Well, and actually he abandons her. and her father gave her to his companion. But where does he go to get the garments that he's going to give to these folks? Pardon? Yes, but where Does he do it right there among the ones that are present? Sorry? He goes to Ashkelon, which is a little bit away from the place. If he is going to kill Philistines because he's angry at them and then give them the wager from there, why does he go someplace else?
He's using his head for once.
I'm sorry?
He's using his head for once. He's actually thinking of, if I kill the people here, they're gonna know it, they're gonna kill me, there's a bunch of possibilities. If I go somewhere else, it'll take longer for them to realize where I got them from.
That's a good point, but it's not the one I had in mind. And let me tell you what I've got in mind and see if it fits. There was sort of a bond of honor because he is married. His father and mother did strike an agreement with her father, and so he can't really take it out on her and them right at that particular location at that time. So he goes to another place and does that, but then when her father gives her to his companion, now they have dishonored him, and that's when he strikes out at them. Does that make sense, or is that anywhere close, or did you ever thought of that, or am I totally off base? Or
It's an interesting view of the Jewish hospitality custom.
yes, sir. Oh, that's my take on it. Let's start looking at anything else on chapter 14 then. Because I can't get my pages open to 15. There we go. Starting with chapter 15. So after a while, in the time of the wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat, and he said, "Let me go into my wife, into her room," but her father would not permit him to go in. Her father said, "I really thought that you thoroughly hated her, therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead." And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them." Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, put a torch between each pair of tails. So when Samson goes back, I guess with that goat as a peace offering to her, finds out her father had given her away to his companion. In a Jewish legal sense, they were married because they were at the marriage feast. And Samson, the Jews had never encountered anything like this before. But the Philistines, that group of people, they didn't pay as close attention to marriage vows as other groups did. So Samson, when he says he is now blameless, that's where I come in with my thought that he went someplace else because he still had to honor them, but now they dishonored him, so he went back. And when he tied the foxes' tails together, and some manuscripts say jackals instead of foxes, but why would he tie a pair of tails together instead of just a torch to each critter? This is country common sense.
I said one tail wasn't long enough.
One tail wasn't long enough? if you have one animal that you would do that to, they would run and hide. They would shirk away. But if you've got two battling against each other, that's going to be total chaos. So when you multiply that number by there'd actually be 150 pair, they're going to run wild and go and set everything on fire. And when he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Why would the Philistines burn or destroy the woman and her father instead of going after Samson, who destroyed their fields?
Maybe they knew he was too strong to be conquered.
They tried to appease him by doing that. They said, well, they wronged Samson, so we'll take care of this issue so we can make peace. Did that work? No. So Samson said to them, "Since you would do a thing like this, I would surely take revenge on you, and after that, I will cease." So Samson just let them know that if you're that kind of people, that you'd burn your own, I'm going to take care of it. So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cliff of the rock of Edom. What does it mean by he attacked them hip and thigh with great slaughter? Was thorough, but also from all appearances, on some of the secular material, history I've read and all, it basically meant that he did it without defensive shield and without anything but hands, throwing them down, beating them up. Just, it was all very physical instead of using any. Didn't have a shield in his hand so he could go all out.
I found in my study that one guy said, "More saying, I'll whip you down one side, down the other."
That's it. So verse 9, the Philistines went up and encamped in Judah and deployed themselves against Lehi, and the men of Judah, "Why have you come up against us?" And so they answered, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this that you have done to us?" So by him taking vengeance out on the Philistines, he's put the Jewish people in a bind also. And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." And then they said, "We have come to arrest you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines." And then Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves." Why would he make them swear that? Why was he willing to let them arrest him, but not willing for them to kill him?
He may have been plotting again.
read a little farther and see if we can. So they spoke to him, saying, No, but we will tie you securely and will surely not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand, took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. And then Samson said, and we'll pick up there next week, but basically, he didn't want his own doing violence against him, and if they had tried to kill him, he would have had to destroy them. But he would allow them to turn him over to the Philistines because he knew that God was on his side, and we saw what happened from there. Thank y'all so much for your attention, your comments.
Brother Larry,